All right, cool. Well, Bryce, thanks for coming on and hanging out here today and be able to get, just some more of this info I think that we can push out to our network about additional tax credits and opportunities that are out there for farmers. At Continuum Ag, we've been talking a lot in our webinars and at our events and in our systems about carbon intensity and the 45Z tax credits. Today, we wanted to feature one of our sponsors from our TopSoil Summit, Boa Safra. Boa Safra is playing in a different tax credit, but I think it's still really important for our network to be aware of. And I think there can be some good synergies, between the credits that you guys are involved in versus our stuff. But Bryce, maybe introduce yourself, number one, and then tee up Boa Safra, and we'll get into the tax credit that I'm alluding to.
Perfect. I appreciate the introduction, Mitchell. And so my name is Bryce Irlbeck, and I grew up in Western Iowa, near Carroll County on a conventional corn and soybean farm. And now we farm organic there and in Nebraska and Texas, and have built that up. So I have a farming background in the organic space, and as well as started a couple other companies that one of them, which is Boa Safra, that we'll be talking about today. And I'll give you the overview. It's not overly complicated. So it's not going to take long to give the overview, but it's something farmers in the right position should be taking advantage of, just the same as what Mitchell's talking about at the 45Z and the carbon credits. It's all benefit to the farmers. And I think one of the things that we tell farmers, you pay taxes in, you might as well get your fair share back out or not pay as much too. So Mitchell, I can start. I can dive in. You
Yeah,
kind
maybe
of lead the way on this one.
go a little bit further on this. Okay,
Yep.
so my understanding of the tax credit is that when a farmer buys land, or when somebody buys agricultural land, you can depreciate the and take right. You can depreciate
Yep.
the fence, the tile, and if you have other building stuff on it, or the fertility.
So yes,
That's what we're
and I
talking.
like it. Correct. And so just the word I like to change in that, it's not a credit, it's a depreciation. So some of yours are credits, ours is a depreciation. There's pretty big difference there. So I just like people to understand that tax credits are better, depreciation still good.
Okay. So
To
not a tax credit at all. We should definitely clear this up a little bit more. This is not
yes,
a tax credit. You're not necessarily getting paid or issued a tax credit based on the
you're
asset of your farm, but you're able to depreciate when you buy a farm. Of course, a farm land itself is a appreciating asset, but
yep.
the tile, the fence, and the fertilizer is a depreciating thing.
Correct. That is exactly how it's looked at. And so, Mitchell, I can stop there. There's a question if you want to answer that, or I can, or you
Yeah,
want
go for it.
to.
Yeah. Roll.
So yeah, I think I think there is not a specific section of tax code for soil health, but to the where we're going and everything, it's not something that is unimaginable. We farm in Texas too. We depreciate the water underneath the ground that we utilize. So it's there's different ways to look at this, and as Mitchell does on the carbon side, as long as you can value it and you can fit it into the tax code, definitely possible ways to do it. I don't know the specific way right now, but soil
Yeah.
health could definitely be a value that depreciates if you lose it.
But for the most part, let's go back to like you guys' like actual business model and stuff here. So
Yes.
a farmer or a landowner buys a piece of land, you come in and you assess all of these different potentially depreciable assets, or you just focus on the soil fertility.
Yeah, so we just focus on the soil fertility, and that is our main core business right now. So Section 180 is what is exactly the code in the IRS code that calls for or allows you to depreciate the fertilizer. And so when you buy a piece of land, you have the fences, the barns, the tile. Section 180 specifically tells you how to depreciate the fertilizer and treat it just like those other assets. You utilize that fertilizer, you replace it. If the farm didn't have fertilizer, it wouldn't be as valuable, just like if it didn't have fences, barns, or tile, or irrigation or anything like that. And so
Sure.
it's in the tax code, section 180, fertilizer depreciation. And so at Boa Safra, what we do is we come out, do the soil testing, value that fertilizer, put all the documentation together from the local sources of fertilizer value, how it's going to be used, why it's excess, all that we put into a report. Farmer can take that report, work with their CPA, and we have CPAs on staff too that help them through that process of understanding how to depreciate that. So instead of go buying another tractor you don't need or a bigger, nicer combine you don't need, it's just another way to depreciate. It's that extra combine, that extra tractor that you don't have to give John Deere all your money to get the depreciation.
Well, and this is one that you have to use it early though into
Yes.
buying farm. What's that look back period look like? So I know there's some rules around that.
Yes. So the well, we tell everybody's 3 years. We go back 3 years of the land purchase, three tax years of the land purchase, because it's a simple amendment to your taxes. After that becomes much more complicated. It is possible. It's just more complicated. And we dive into it with the potential customer to let them know exactly those steps of going back further than 3 years.
Okay. Can every single farmer that buys a farm, like anybody that listens to this, anybody that watches this on YouTube or on our podcast stuff, anybody that's bought basically a farm in the last 3 years, they can potentially qualify for this, or they should be looking at this? Is that
Yes.
what it boils back to?
Yes, and that is 100% correct. So if you bought a farm in the last 3 years, whether it's row crop, pasture, timber, anything that you use agriculture, use the nutrients and take them off.
Okay. And then how's that work? Because when I originally had heard about this, I thought it was you needed to like get some soil data before you put on fertilizer and that kind of stuff. But can you basically still get a soil test and then discount off and work backwards, or how does that work?
Yep, so that's exactly what we do. There's one way you have the soil test when you bought it, or soil test at some point, and then we go in and we value the fertilizer you put on. So the farmer would tell us we put on 180 pounds of nitrogen. It's not a big one, but 200 pounds of phosphorus. We'll take that out of the report. We'll show that value, everything in there, so we're not double deducting it. Because that would be the one thing the IRS says, no, you can't put fertilizer on, deduct it, and then deduct it on this too. So it's fertilizer that's there when you do it. So you back into that number.
So, and basically, yeah, it's looking at, okay, so you now know when you bought the farm, how much fertilizer did you have and what's the value of that fertilizer? And you can deduct that. Are we talking pretty much
Yes.
just phosphorus, potassium, and the lime, or we're talking like nitrogen? Can you do like micronutrients? Like, is it like everything?
We do all the nutrients. So
Wow,
micro and macro.
that's
Yes.
awesome. I mean,
Yep.
so some of this, I mean, you could be talking a substantial like value here if you're buying
Our
good land.
Yep, our average is about 1,400 across the whole country.
Wow.
$1,400 an acre, and it varies from pasture ground being 700 to the Illinois or good hog manured ground to that 2,200.
Wow. And then what's the depreciation schedule on this? How many years?
Yes, and so it varies between CPAs. So there is no in the tax code. There's nothing that says it has to be X, Y, Z years. But we advise people to follow common ag practices, which is at 5 to 7 years. Now there's some CPAs that take it all in 1 year. Because you buy a tractor, you can take it all in 1 year type of system. So it varies between CPAs that our customers work with. There isn't one exact way to do it that is spelled out in the code.
Got it. And I suppose too, it just kind of looks at, the what that customer needs too. What kind of
Yes.
depreciation are they looking at? What kind of are they looking at getting? So interesting. So the and basically, I mean, well, maybe let's talk one. I kept saying the company name wrong, Boa Safra. I keep saying
Yes.
Boa Safra. Where does this where's the name come from? Like, and how did this come about? Because you guys are what? You're 4 years in now?
Yes, we are 4 years in. Yep.
4 years in.
So Boa
Yeah.
Safra, my partner Tyler and I both farmed in Brazil. And actually, we were looking for a name, and he had an LLC left from Brazil. And Boa Safra is good harvest in Portuguese.
Oh,
And
cool.
so his LLC down there was good harvest in Portuguese.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. It's yeah, I'm catching on here now.
Yes,
So just I don't speak Portuguese, so that's
I do a little fala pouco Portuguese.
there we go. I now we got some interesting stuff going down in South America, but I know zero Portuguese, that's for sure. So interesting. So, um, what do you guys see? And I suppose it's like kind of some of the opportunities, especially as it relates to a lot of our audience being like the soil health type of
Mhm.
guys. Like, how should they be thinking about this? I guess, and being able to tap into utilizing you guys' service and thinking about the long term viability for their operations as well.
Yeah, I think as this becomes more mainstream, and look, there's different ways this doesn't work for people, but most part it does. We really see it changing the fabric of how land is purchased, mainstream once this is utilized, because you have the no and stuff, the tile, the barns, all that type of thing. So I think what we're seeing, we're working with big banks, and we're working getting it into the loan process of those big banks, and so I think it really changes the fabrics of land purchases in the next how many years going forward as this process scales up.
Yeah, totally. And usually, like, kind of what does that look like? How long does it take? I mean, because really, you just got to have it done before you file your taxes, right? Of hopefully
Yes.
you're doing it in that 1 year. Like your ideal system would be, hey, you bought a farm this year. Let's get it soil sampled. Let's run the analysis and have it ready for tax season, right? Like that's like
Right.
the ideal journey.
The ideal journey, yes.
Yeah.
So it takes a process to get samplers out and go through get the samples, because we've done it about 42 states now, so we have samples all over the country.
Okay.
So you get the samples in, you get them processed. You go through the data of what fertilizer was the day it was purchased, put that all in the documentation and get the report out. It's about a 30-day process.
Okay. What's the business model? You guys do a like a per acre deal, or you get a percentage of it, or how's that work?
We do it per acre, so we don't do a
Yeah.
percentage, because we feel like that would throw us into a category of one not wanting to, but you could potentially manipulate the numbers to
Sure.
bring it higher. So we just stay at a per acre fee.
Got it. Got it. Cool. I'm assuming the path is, being able to go through you guys' website. Obviously, from our side too, for Continuum Ag customers, like just contact your regen success agronomist, and we'll make the connections and get it brought over. But because basically all you guys need is what when
When
you
you
bought with
purchased
the
it,
boundary, like
maps, yeah, when you purchase it, maps, LSEs, then if you've applied anything to it,
yeah,
it's yeah, we don't need too much information on it.
pretty simple. What are you seeing as like are there other, because we've been talking a lot about this, like the carbon intensity stuff, some of these new initiatives that are happening and utilizing federal policy. You guys obviously able to, help farmers utilize the federal policy. Are there other things like this or other like
Yeah,
companies
I
or
think there.
opportunities that you think that like a lot of farmers don't know about or things that like, you know, other farmers should also be looking at along these same type of lines?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of things out there. I mean, our farm, we have we have a person that just focuses on grant writing. And so there's a ton of grants out there. There's a ton of things you can do to be proactive if you're pushing soil. And this is probably more soil health than what we do. But if you're pushing soil health or getting more integrated on the farm, there's a ton of things that you can do out there. And unfortunately, just be honest, the time where it is, it has to deal with the government. Right now. And if you want to compete in this space, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
mean, that's definitely what we're saying too with this carbon intensity stuff is like, hey, I mean, don't necessarily want to have to rely on, different government programs or have to, be because they're fragile. I mean, this stuff
yeah,
could go away at any time or it could change and stuff. And like not naive to that, but the concept here of in your instance, hey, you need to know what your fertility is anyway, know what the value of that is, and be able to utilize that for your advantage and farm it correctly. From our side, it's like, hey, you need to know what your carbon intensity is. You need to know what your environmental impact is anyway, whether it be you're going to monetize it with a federal program, you're going to just utilize that information to farm smarter and improve your own profitability, or you're going to utilize that information in somebody else's sustainability initiative. The concept of managing that data and knowing where you're at is the same no matter what.
yes, it definitely is throughout the whole farm. I mean, there's programs we go back 4 or 5 years that we're applying for and grants and things like that. That we have data back. It doesn't matter what it is. You got to go back and be able to utilize it. And so I think that is 100% true. The data management and capturing all that data and holding it so you can go back and understand it.
Interesting. No, it's cool. And I'm sure we'll get get some of the additional info queued in, and hopefully a lot of folks were able to see at our TopSoil summit and all that kind of stuff as well. We'll have to figure out like getting, for farmers that are utilizing TopSoil already, we already have a bunch of the info that you guys need. So, definitely want to be able to make that as streamlined as possible for all of our stuff here. So I think that's a really cool deal. Let's shift gears here a little bit. Let's talk about like your farm and some of your background type stuff. And we've got a lot of overlapping buddies and stuff with the Weises and all these guys. I mean, and a lot of other people beyond that, but maybe talk about like your farm a little bit and, kind of dig a little bit deeper on that, because you're like all organic and you have been for a while. Like you guys were doing organic pretty like full scale multiple years ago.
Yeah. So we started, it was either don't farm or become organic, because we were 800 acres. And my dad had a full-time job too. So
Wow.
I had met some organic guys and I did the math in my head on the calculator and said this was the way we went. And so we went from 800 acres to we're about 18,000 today of organic.
Wow.
We started about 8 years ago.
Yeah, that's wild.
And we do a lot of different rotations. Actually, I shouldn't say our main rotation is corn and alfalfa, and we raise corn. We're tied to a chip company, so all of our corn goes in a 50-pound bag and goes down to Phoenix to go into a single chip company.
Wow.
And so that's everything we do on our farm, is to provide the healthiest growth for that corn in the third year. So we're 3 years of alfalfa, 1 year of corn.
Got it. And most of the ground you're working on, like it's transitioning with like the 3 year of alfalfa and you're transitioning to organic, or that's just part of like the rotation that you do the corn. And then in order to kind of continue to really optimize an organic system, keep things mowed up, be able to do no-till and keep the weeds down and all that, like that's just part of the rotation.
So I mean, for us, we did 3 years of corn 1 year, or 3 years of alfalfa 1 year corn through transition, and then even into organic.
Okay.
It is our thing, and it's to keep the weeds down. It's to put the nitrogen in the soil and to get that soil going with alfalfa again, and doing that 1 year corn and going back to it.
Yeah, because in that corn year, you guys are typically cultivating between the rows and keeping the weeds that way, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So being able to kind of build that structure back up and stuff. And obviously alfalfa is not great at it, but at least be able to kind of hold things back together. And
and alfalfa, the big thing for us, we're cutting weeds out 16 times in the rotation. So virtually we have zero weeds in our organic field just because of that 3 years of alfalfa. Not because we're great at cultivating or we got some secret, but the alfalfa is the secret. So we do that, and then we usually produce 100. We figure 120, 150 pounds of nitrogen through that soil, that alfalfa. And so the only thing I can't screw up in life is corn after alfalfa. It's very hard. You can do a lot of things to that corn, and it'll still produce very well, is what we see.
Wow. And for the like organic alfalfa type stuff, I know there was some opportunity you guys were looking at with is it pet food type stuff and things like that, or what is it? What does that look like for the organic space?
Yeah, so we have three main markets for alfalfa. One is we supply an organic dairy in Dallas, Texas. So everything in Iowa goes to Dallas, Texas. It gets put in a big square, gets put on a truck, and goes to Dallas, Texas. All of our stuff in Nebraska goes into a pelleting mill. So they pellet about 50,000 tons of alfalfa a year. And that goes into dog food, hunting food, deer food, rabbit and gerbil food. And so we chop all that and it goes into little bags, and then it goes out to there. And then we do our alfalfa rotation down there. And then our Texas farm is alfalfa and potatoes.
Yeah. Oh, and potatoes.
Yes. We don't farm the potatoes, we rent it out.
Sure.
But we create value in our farming operation down there because we're willing to do 3 years of alfalfa. And the potatoes need that. They need that for the potatoes.
Yeah, they need that rotation anyway. And that's how a lot of potatoes are, though, right? Even in like conventional potatoes, you'll have potato farming companies or farmers that just do potatoes, and they'll rent land and rotate it around and stuff, right?
Correct. Yep. And that's it. That's exactly what they do. And they're looking for people that do alfalfa, and they pay for you to do the 3 years of alfalfa so they have a better potato crop. That's the soil health stuff. Potatoes aren't the healthiest thing to farm on a soil, but you have to have the soil healthy before you put them on.
For sure. I mean, just taking so much nutrient to them. And yeah, I mean what you're getting at, like obviously when you're harvesting potatoes, like it's a
It's
very invasive tillage
yes.
system. Wow. And so I knew that they were doing a lot of that with like just regular potatoes and just in a conventional system, but I didn't necessarily know that there was a big group doing it from the organic side of things.
I would say the organic potato industry is probably the one of the top three biggest industries in organic. You
Wow.
got your milk industry, you got your chicken industry, but then it's potatoes.
Wow. That's wild.
So
And they're
yeah.
mostly going like direct, like would these be like food grade stuff, or these are like people that are processing potatoes and stuff?
So this is my lingo from being around the potatoes for about total of 3 hours.
Okay.
They have chipper potatoes that go into chips, and then they'll have the mashed potatoes, and those are all the kind of believe the ones that don't make chippers. Those are the two that I think is growing on our place. The whole company comes in and grows them
Yeah,
separately than us. So
that's wild. Um, nah, pretty cool deal. And um,
the other thing you might find very interesting that we're doing, which I'd like to talk to you more about, is we use a lot of chicken manure. So I would say we're about 50-60% chicken manure, but we're creating our own fertilizer through waste products, waste streams. So we are doing 4 to 8,000 tons of meat products that are waste products. Meat is very high in nutrients. I mean, much higher than a ton of chicken manure. So we take the waste and we mix it with leaves from the local compost, and I can create a ton. A ton will have about 50 pounds of nitrogen, 100 pounds of phosphorus, and 40 pounds of potassium.
okay.
So
And compost and stuff, and that's on like that. You've got some animal ag stuff as well, and then it's basically just the leftover from the processing. Is that what you said that it was?
so we're just going to processing plants. We don't have any animal stuff.
Oh,
We have zero. We're going straight to the factories, and they're paying us to take their waste.
oh, wow, cool.
So turning
Um,
that has actually changed the soil probably more than one would imagine. And
that's
you don't see it in corn as fast as you do alfalfa.
okay, sure. I suppose the biggest concern there would be, are you getting any kind of pathogens or any bad bugs that are coming out of that system? But I suppose you put it through the composting process
We're
and
heating it up to 150, I think. I believe I'd have to look at where we're at.
150 degrees, but in a compost system, that's probably about right. Being able to
Yeah.
let it get really heated up, kill off some of those pathogens, and then be able to kind of get it cooled down and mix it and get the right bugs in the system.
Yes, exactly. And it comes out to about perfect nutrients. When you have calcium, you have sulfur, you have nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, and you have a ton of calcium, which I think is important for some of our soils.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting. And then you're just like spreading that, right? You would just be
We're
broadcasting.
spreading 1 to 2 tons an acre,
Yeah,
depending on the crop and the rotation.
sure. Wow, that's cool. It's wild that like I've never heard of anyone else, utilizing like an opportunity like that of like, hey, this company has this waste product, like let's compost it, let's utilize it, let's get it back out there on the field.
Might be the only farm in Iowa getting paid to fertilize.
Yeah, that's a good deal. We need
So
and need to be able to capitalize in on that depreciable asset. They're continuing to build on it.
exactly,
Somebody
exactly.
in the
So
future, gets the land passed down, and if the cards are able to be played right, that might be some real value there.
exactly. So I think the biggest learning part, what you guys are doing and what we're doing,
Yeah.
organic's not the absolute best thing for the land. Don't get me wrong. We do tillage. We were no-till for 30 years before that. I'm not gonna sit here and say tilling up the land like we do is the absolute best thing. But how I value it, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, I'm just saying how I get over that is their crop rotation. We can see a huge
Yeah.
difference than just a corn soybean rotation. Having alfalfa, we start alfalfa with a small grain. We're using these composts and stuff I think for us, that's that the rotation and the fertilizer change has shown us a huge difference.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm with you that I like, some of these like no-till, like any disturbance, we're going backwards, but you're doing it once out of the 4 years.
Yeah.
You're doing it a lot in that 4-year system, and maybe there's going to be opportunity to decrease some of that with cover crop or something like that in that program, but not without challenge though too.
Yeah.
It's extremely hard to be able to do a no-till cover crop corn in a organic system. But
It's very challenging. We played around with it. We haven't found anything that's going to right now, but everything changes. I mean, right now there's robots out in Iowa farms picking weeds. So as we go forward, things are going to change so fast in ag
sure.
that it's going to be hard to keep up with.
Yeah, and be able to at least cut back on some of that. And if you got to, run, the cultivator once or twice or something like that in the year to be able to get things cleaned up, like be able to just have it decreased anyway.
Yes. Yeah.
So you said you guys aren't doing any of your stuff in Brazil anymore? Or down
We are.
none of it down there? Yeah.
No. Brazil is a very, very beautiful country. Very, very great people. Those farmers, I tell you what, they're better business than I. There's cutthroat farmers down there, and they're good. They're good. So,
and some of these farms are massive. Like you got to be.
Yeah, I mean, some of them are building their own chemical factories. That's how big they are.
That's insane.
So,
wow. Any wanted to kind of keep things kind of quick, and I think this has been really good and informative to me. We'll definitely be pushing this out there to our whole audience and stuff. But any final like kind of takeaway or any final kind of thought or comment on your side or things we didn't hit on or anything like that?
no, I think the big picture here is there's a lot of opportunity out there. There's a lot of people that have knowledge in different spaces, and it's being able to utilize that in a process that makes sense for farms, and being able to utilize that by having good records, by having good data, and knowing the right people to utilize it right.
That's right. Yeah, it just continues to come down to that data. You're not gonna be able to tap into anything you're doing, anything that we're doing without having that data.
Mm-hmm.
And there's groups out there to be able to help to enable it to happen. So
Yeah.
really cool. Well, Bryce, thanks also thanks to Boa Safra for sponsoring our events and stuff, for hanging out and being part of this here too. We'll get this pushed out there, and anybody that wants more information, contact your Continuum Ag folks. We'll get you connected